A lot of kids are not growing up in the farm life anymore. And parents, I give credit to the parents of today. They still want their kids to have that nostalgia a little bit from when they were kids and they saw more farms, and so that they bring their kids to a pumpkin patch, or you do obviously other events. But it's one of those things that people love, being able to come out to a farm and not feel the stresses of the world, which is one of the great things about what we do is, hey, people are stressed out. People are stressed out big time. And when they can come for like those 2-3 hours and their kids go home wasted, tired, it's really a magical place for a lot of families.
Hey, that was John Boss from Dutch Hollow Farms in the beautiful Central Valley of California. This is the Farm Traveler Podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Williams. On this episode, I'll be talking with John about his family farm, about how his parents immigrated from Holland to the United States, and they started working in dairy, but now they switched over and they are a hotspot in terms of agritourism. They have pumpkins, they have tulips, they have sunflowers. They also have really cool events like date nights, family barbecues, and countless other attractions on the farm. So watch this whole interview as John and I talk about the family farm, how they manage agritourism, how they manage growing pumpkins in the summer for them to be ready in the fall, everything that goes into it, like managing 120 employees, advertising on social media, and working with the local community. So enjoy the video, and if you like it, consider sharing it with a friend or family member. And of course, like the video, subscribe, do all the normal YouTube stuff. That helps us out a ton. But on with the episode. So I was stumbling across Instagram, like trying to find, people, farms on there. And I stumbled across yours at Dutch Hollow Farms. And I mean, you've got a really big Instagram account. I mean, it seems like you're putting a lot of tender love and care into that.
Yeah. Needless to say, I wish I was 19 and young and better looking. I think I could be, like I said, my son Isaac could be 100,000 plus followers just because he's young and attractive. But I've really nailed down my demographic, and that's one of the biggest things. Like, just like your podcast, uh, you're not going to put your podcast out for guys that are 68 years old. I mean, I've really honed in on my audience, and I think I do a really good job with it. And I'm real. It's one of the things that a lot of people aren't nowadays. Let's just try and be real.
Yeah, you don't really see that a lot on social media. Like you see like these fake lives or fake influencers and
Oh,
stuff. So it's good that you're
it's
being real
awful.
about what you're doing. Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, and I show a lot of the bad, the good, everything in between, and that day to day grind, which is, I think that's one of the things that I think a lot of people appreciate about what I do, is they see me telling the story, and that's everything.
So why do you think it's important to share not only the good, obviously, but why do you think it's important to share the bad, like in agriculture, like what you're doing? Why do you think that's important?
I think a lot of people just think it's easy. There's a number of places that have thought that they were going to go into the pumpkin patch business and think it was going to be easy street because they see, oh, look at how many cars are at Dutch Hollow, like that's just
Hmm.
that's just easy. But then they started, and then they went, oh crap, there's way more to it. There's way more to it.
So yeah, what's the background of you guys? Like, how did y'all start out, and like, what's the stage where you're at now?
Well, I was born in Southern California. My parents immigrated from the Netherlands in 1960, and
Okay.
my dad was working for various dairy farmers in Southern California. And then in 1982, he was actually able to purchase the farm that we're at right now. And
Oh, okay.
I was a mere 11 years old. So I always say that I learned how to work because we had a dairy farm, and the dairy farm was
Hmm.
365. there's no holidays. And when you have a grind of pumpkin patch season where we're open every single day for about 35 days straight, that puts a lot of pressure on you. And I'm trying to take a step back a little bit more, but my wife has even said, like, how do you do that? How do you just work every single day? And I said, well, I grew up on the dairy.
That's true. That work ethic of growing up on a dairy, because I mean, like you said, it's 24/7. You've got to milk the cows 2 to 3 times a day. There are no off days. If you do, the cows are going to be miserable. So I feel like that's a really good way to develop a work ethic whenever you're young.
Absolutely. And I think my son is starting to understand it more because he's never really had to put in the work like I've had to. And now that he's working for me this summer, he's like, wow, there's just a lot of steps that we need to go through in order to achieve. Our intention is to have about 70,000 people come through our farm in October alone.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, and I think we have a lot of room to grow. It's time and money. It's time and money.
So are y'all still doing dairy, or did you completely pivot to pumpkins?
Right. My dad retired the dairy farm. I want to say it's been 7, 8 years ago now. And
Okay.
honestly, it was just kind of sitting empty. It was for sale for a while. My parents were thinking about moving. We didn't have our operation there until just 2.5 years ago when we moved from a different location. So when we started from nothing, and to grow to what we are today is really kind of nothing but phenomenal. But we had a lot of help along the way. But I leased a piece of ground that was literally right across the street from a major shopping center, and so you
Hmm.
had shopping center and just a nice old farm, but we didn't own it. So, it was kind of one of those things. So, one of my pet peeves is for how many years was I there? Since 2006, I was there. And so we moved about 2.5 years ago. For all of those years, oh, they're building Costco. They're building Costco. They're building Costco. Well, that's so nerve-wracking though. It's awful. It's awful because you think, hey, I'm trying to grow my business, and yet there's so many people that act like they want to just take it away. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Oh,
But
Costco. I mean, like when you think of it, or sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say they just started moving dirt a week ago. So
Oh, okay.
it took 2.5 more years after we left, but the word on the street was like it was going to happen sooner than later, and that was a big concern of mine. So I'm like, I'd rather transition in a winter than trying to transition during a summer and then just pulling my hair out. So we had to go to work on my dad's dairy farm. It was really dilapidated. It had been sitting empty for years. Uh, if you go back through some of the social media, you'll see lots of concrete that has been removed. And because they're tripping hazards, I mean, stuff that's fine for
Hmm.
cattle, all of a sudden you're going, well, some old grandma's going to get mad at me if I don't remove that and put nice concrete. And you think about handicap accessibility. I mean, there's just it's endless on. But what's the nice thing is I knew every square inch of my dad's farm, so I knew
Hmm.
exactly what needed to come out, what needed to stay. Now, did we find lots of problems behind a problem? Yes. So it's been a very stressful 2 years, but we're slowly on getting closer to the end of like, okay, we're done cleaning up stuff, and now we can start expanding and doing great stuff.
That's awesome. I mean, you're working on like trying to get ready to expand, but also, like you said, you're having like over 70,000 people a year like visit you guys. That's wild. I mean, so like when you were planning to, what was the inspiration behind having people come and visit the farm?
Honestly, so in 2005, my best friend in those days grew about 700 acres of pumpkins.
Oh
And
wow, that's a
at
lot
the
of pumpkins.
Well, and now they're as big as 1,850 acres of pumpkins. That's how large they are. But they're completely designed to sell to Trader Joe's, Walmarts of the world. They're selling wholesale, if you will, and they do a phenomenal job. They're really just they're the cream of the crop in farming. Now, in 2005, he said, "Hey, I've got all these huge prize winners, which we consider a prize winner to be 100 pounds or more. Some of them, prize winners usually are about 75 to 250 pounds." And we decided to sell them on a street corner. And we were like a bunch of clowns, trying. So he filled his whole trailer, and I think we ended up making like $220 each in an afternoon. And we just had so much fun because we're interacting with the public, and people were like, "Wow, those are huge pumpkins." And we're like, "Yeah, we'll load them up into your it was crazy. It was so much fun. And that inspired, like, hey, we said after that, if the right place ever comes up, let's start a pumpkin patch. And sure enough, by May, and it was kind of interesting how that place just kind of fell into my lap because the guy that was farming it before, he up and died. And I thought the neighbor was going to farm it. Well, eventually it fell into my lap. And when that happened, I actually called Brian, not my wife, first. And I said, "Do I have a pumpkin patch corner for you?" Because it was obviously because of the visibility. I mean, location, location, location. Our location isn't as great, but we have a better farm now because people feel like they're in the country now. And so, and honestly, you can still see new housing from the farm. So we're not that far from the city. So we're actually in an ideal location, and people just love it. And people want that farm experience because, let's face it, what's happening more and more, a lot of kids are not growing up in the farm life anymore. And parents, I give credit to the parents of today. They still want their kids to have that nostalgia a little bit from when they were kids and they saw more farms. And so that they bring their kids to a pumpkin patch, or we do obviously other events, but it's one of those things that people love, being able to come out to a farm and not feel the stresses of the world, which is one of the great things about what we do is, hey, people are stressed out. People are stressed out big time. And when they can come for like those 2, 3 hours and their kids go home wasted, tired, and really it's kind of the price of a movie,
Hmm.
without the $9 popcorn and $10 soda. It's really a magical place for a lot of families.
And that the popcorn and the drink, that's all small. I mean, if you want a large, it's like $20 for a popcorn, $20 for a soda.
Right, right, right.
That's so cool. And I saw something online earlier this week that said something like, I don't know, the average American spends like 92 or 94% of their time inside versus like it used to
Oh,
be like 50-50, like way back in the day. And so this is such a
yeah,
great way where more people can get outside, the younger generations can get outside and like learn
in
about agriculture and get like very engaged.
right, in a very safe environment, because
Mm.
that's one of the things that we try to. I mean, hey, not that any of our rides are kind of sketch, but like uh, we, but there's an element. It's amazing. You know what? I think I could start a new business though, and this might sound absolutely crazy, but I think I could start a gravel farm because our parking lot is gravel. And when most kids see gravel, what is the first thing that they do? They go and they grab gravel and they start throwing it, which
That's accurate.
eh, which is and I'm like, I was always taught as a kid, like, you don't pick up gravel, like, you don't. And when you grow up around it, it's kind of like, well, you just don't do that, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, we had our fair share of dirt clod fights, but uh, it's amazing to me that a kid just sees something so simple as gravel, and it's because there's no exposure. There's no
Hmm.
exposure. So they haven't learned that, hey, gravel needs to stay on the ground so that we don't damage somebody else's car when you decide to go chuck it. So um, more lessons learned.
The more you know. I mean, I'm very very guilty of that. Anytime I see rocks in a parking lot or something, I grab them, start throwing them. Obviously, not towards cars or people, but
Good,
I
good,
guess it's just a
good. I
habit you
can
learn when
appreciate.
you're young.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
So, what all goes into managing growing pumpkins? Because I know they don't grow year round. Obviously, you've got to plan it out to where they're growing in the fall. You're going to have a bunch of them. What all goes into planning it for your super busy season?
We actually start in that process probably in December, January already because we
Mm,
start ordering seed just because, hey, we need to know what's sold really well, and like certain varieties just don't sell very well. We can sell a 3 to 5 pound orange pumpkin. Every kid loves it. They can hold it in their hand. They love them. There's a variety that's the same size, but it's yellow, and people don't want to touch them. And it's
hmm.
so you kind of like go, well, that doesn't make any sense. You would think, hey, well, the family is going to pick up so many different kinds, and ultimately, there's just certain varieties that people want more than others. We can grow a mini wart, which is 3 to 5 pounds. It has warts on the pumpkin itself. Can't sell them, but we have one that's 18 pounds, and everybody wants to buy them because they just look really,
Mm,
really cool. There's a lot to know in where are we going to, in the process of where we're going to plant them next year starts right now because we don't really like to go back to back in the same soil. So there's a lot of planning, and sometimes we just kind of hope, oh, maybe the neighbor wants to trade with us. We'll grow corn on our farm so that they can have it, and we can grow pumpkins on. We like to grow pumpkins on what we call fresh ground every single year because, like, Isaac was looking at pumpkins just a couple hours ago, and he sent me a video. It's all fresh ground pumpkins. He saw already 4 to 5 pumpkins on a plant. And that tells me, well, first of all, the weather's been fantastic this year. But that
mhm.
also tells me, we're in prime dirt. And whenever you can put pumpkins in fresh ground that's never been touched by pumpkins before, your yields just go up off the chart. So there's a lot in the process of from start to finish. And then every variety has a different amount of days. So we have a variety that's called Fairy Tale. We have to start them in April. They take 130 days to grow them from plant to maturity. And then we have a variety that makes a 12-pound pumpkin. It takes 80 days or sometimes less to grow a pumpkin. So you want to plant those accordingly because anytime you have a pumpkin that sits too long on the vine, you always run the risk of sunburn, and then you got product that nobody wants to buy, right? Nobody wants to buy
Mm.
a pumpkin that has like a big sun splotch on it. Nothing wrong with it, but it's just discolored. It's just like our produce in the grocery store. You're going to pick up the one that has the blotch? No, I don't think so. So it's pretty important to schedule all of your plantings out, and we're almost done seeding. We've got a couple of varieties that we'd like to plant yet. I just felt like we were kind of short on that particular size, and I knew that with the amount of days until Halloween, if we were to guess how many days till Halloween, I think it's like 108 days
Okay.
until Halloween. Or wait, no, 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 no. It's 120 something. I can Google that real quick.
100 and something days till Halloween, at least. Yeah.
Days to Halloween. Let's see what it says. 126 days from today. So
Oh, you were
I
close. 126 days. Okay.
so I have one variety that's like 110 days, and that's usually on back east numbers.
Hmm.
Our weather's better than any of the farms back east, so I can probably get that down to 102, 100 days. So I still have plenty of time to ripen those pumpkins. Does that make any sense? It's right
Yeah.
on the
No, totally.
line.
Hmm.
It's right on the line, but because there's but it's like one particular size that I was like, I think we're kind of short on that size. Um, so there's a lot of planning that goes into it.
It sounds like it. And before I forget, do you ship anything out east for like pumpkin
No,
patches or something
no.
like that? Because I know that's a huge thing.
Yeah, no, there's some growers in New Mexico and Colorado that grow,
Okay.
1,000 acres each, and they can ship them. I can buy pumpkins in New Mexico, and they can ship them out here cheaper than if I buy them from, like, say, my best friend, who's 25 minutes down the road. Uh,
Hmm.
it's just it's just California. Hmm.
That's true. Yeah, I remember growing up at my church. We had a pumpkin patch every October, and so we would get them. I think like maybe 2 or 3 weeks before Halloween would really start, and we would go out there. We'd get a huge semi truck, and we'd unload all the pumpkins, and then we would like work it every couple of days. And we had to go out there like every night and rotate the pumpkins so that it wouldn't get
Yeah,
mildewy on the bottom of them. And I just remember
yeah,
like there were huge pumpkins, little pumpkins, and like you said, I mean, even working at a pumpkin patch, the consumers, they wanted the perfect round orange pumpkin. They didn't want something that was
yeah,
lumpy. They didn't want something that
yeah,
was oval or misshapen. They want a perfectly
yeah.
beautiful pumpkin.
No, and my guys are really good when they're harvesting out in the fields. I mean, there are sometimes what we would call a flat back, where they just
Mhm.
won't ever stand up on their own. And that's usually
Mm.
either it was short on water, or something happened that it just didn't make a perfect pumpkin. But we usually leave those out in the field, or we feed them to cattle. So uh, everything usually has a purpose.
There you go. And so, in addition to pumpkins, you guys also grow flowers and tulips, right?
Yeah, so this year was phenomenal for tulips. We had almost, what did we have? 26 inches of rain in California, which our
Oh,
normal
wow.
is 13. Our normal is 13. So tulips love cold. They love wet, and that's what we got. And so it was that one year in however many that those they just did exceptionally well. I remember one particular variety, one of the first ones to bloom, bloomed nearly 4 weeks before they faded all the way out. It was
Oh,
at least
wow.
three, it was at least 3, and that's rare for our area. Normally
Mhm.
2 weeks, normally 2 weeks on a variety, but yeah, it was a phenomenal year for that. And then so baby animal days then morphs into, or sorry, baby animal days comes immediately after tulip season.
Okay.
And so that's your season where families can come to the farm. They can still do a lot of the attractions, but like the slides, the zip lines, all that kind of stuff, tricycle track. But they're actually able to hold baby chicks, a goat, a lamb, petting zoo type thing. We do a really nice job with that. We keep our animals uh, year round. We used to sell a bunch of them. It's super expensive to do it like this, where you feed them year
Mhm.
round, but we can identify who's naughty and who's nice. and, and so,
There you go. That's a good
you know,
strategy.
not every goat is a loving goat, right? And so we can identify because we're around them every single day, and then we can see
Mhm.
behaviors that, but since they're grown up in our system, basically, it's like it's 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 really amazing how, like, most of the animals that we have that are born at the farm are always super chill, and that
Mhm.
is the key. You want animals that are like, hi, hi, you don't want them to be aggressive, obviously, because a lot of people don't understand that. And, well, why is this cute little goat like wanting to headbutt me? You know, um, it happens. And, but we try to educate people and say, hey, this is what's going to happen occasionally. But if we see a pattern starting, we can remove that animal, and then we've
Mhm.
always got 5 to 10 others that'll take its spot, just because. Um, yeah. So, and I show that process too. I mean, we're this fall we're always in breeding season. So if you see the male goat climbing on some of the ladies, it's like, well, kids, this is what happens. This is how we
This is a
get
teachable
babies
moment.
first. Teachable moment. So, and I think those are good things. I think because in the cases of, like, say, a vegan, for instance, or people that aren't vegan or but are considering a lifestyle change, they have a better understanding of how they're raised and why they're raised a particular way, and then they can make that decision later on in life, whether they choose to go eat an animal or not. But
Mhm.
so we use it as a teaching tool, and that's the animals are a huge, huge teaching tool.
That's huge. I love that you have those teachable moments. I mean, I think that's obviously very cool for people to learn, but it's awesome that they can learn it from you and they can learn it on the farm instead of just seeing it, wherever it might be, and it can get misconstrued. There can be misinformation on it, so
Right,
they're literally
right.
learning it on a farm. That's awesome.
Because what I can't stand is someone that might come to the farm. They see a couple of flies on a calf, and we try to do everything in our power to mitigate, flies. But when they immediately go to social media and then they type in a bad review, I'm like, did you ever talk to an employee? No. Well,
Hmm.
it that's what we're there for. And so it a lot of times they'll come back later and say, what, I you're right. You're right. I shouldn't have gone straight to, my fingers, instead of, hey, you talk to the farmer. If there's an employee that's bad, I need to know. But if you just race home and go, tell the farms. Hey, not every
Yeah.
not every employee is a first round pick. I mean, uh, it, it's hey, I mean, life happens, but well, and that's another thing. If you have, because that's I hate the review game. I just that
Mhm.
just those social sites for reviews. I cannot stand them just because
I mean,
it
do
doesn't
you feel like
it doesn't
people sorry, go ahead.
no, it just doesn't give you a fair representation of what you're doing. Now, if you see a
Mhm.
lot of them, yeah, okay, I understand. Then something needs to be changed. But uh, for the most part, man, we run a very tight ship, and what's great is we have employees that come back year after year, and if we, if hey, one of their requirements to work for our farm is every person is treated the same. I don't care if they have tattoos written or like all over their neck. I don't care what they look like. I don't care what color. I don't care, ethnicity, their preferences. I don't care. We are here to show them a good time, and I think we we do well in that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like you're kind of mentioning it. I feel like review sites, I mean, like Google, and I am very much guilty of this too, but I feel like people are much more likely to review something if they have a bad experience. And they're not very likely to share their
Yeah.
experience if it was positive. I don't know why, but I feel like that's just kind of the way that
Right.
it is.
Well, because I think we had someone recently. It's like, well, I've been there 7 times, and we had a great time the previous six, and that one time, And I said, well, then why didn't you write us a good review those previous 6 times? Oh, I never thought about that. I'm like, yeah, it's not fair. It's not fair because,
Mhm.
hey, we are not perfect. We are not perfect in the least, but we try. I mean, the amount of hours that we put in to making sure that people have a great time. I don't know if anybody puts in the time or effort. I mean, I'm sure there are places that do, just as good a job, but man, we put in a lot of effort to make sure that everybody's happy.
It sounds like, I mean, how do you go about managing all that? Because I mean, not only are you a pumpkin patch, you've got tulips, you've got a petting zoo, you've got zip lines and bicycle courses.
Yeah.
Like, how do you
Yeah.
manage so much stuff on the farm?
Yeah. So last fall, we had upwards to 120 employees.
Oh, wow.
So that is a lot of people. And so we have a lot of senior management people that have worked for me for 5, 6 plus years. A lot of the people that we hire, it is a stepping stone for their future careers. Not saying that they go
Mm,
into uh, it's job experience, right? There's hey, we hire a lot of 16-year-old kids, and most of them are great because we actually can't stand the 25 to 35-year-old that doesn't have work. Well, there's
mhm.
usually a reason that a 25 or 35-year-old doesn't have work because there's plenty of work out there. And so we like to go younger. They haven't been jaded by the world. They're eager to earn money to eventually get their license or buy a car. Um, hey, I appreciate those moms that come to us and they want to earn. For example, there was a mom that her husband told her we don't have Disneyland in the budget for this year. So she came out to work at the farm for our field trips because the kids were old enough that they were at
Hmm.
school. She's a stay at home mom, but she went out and earned enough money to take her family to Disneyland. And so
That's super cool.
that's that's what it's all about. It everything goes downhill. I mean, we're doing good, everybody else does good as well. I, I wholeheartedly believe we're a community place, and we actually care what the community thinks, feels, you name it.
So that's the perfect segue because that was kind of my next little topic of discussion. Like when you're starting like agritourism, like you guys, I mean, you're not trying to be um, like a Disney World where it's just you, it's just the farm. Like obviously, you want to highlight the community as a whole. So like how do you go about getting the community involved in your business as well, so everybody can win?
Well, the big part of it is me being on social media, and I
Mm,
someone said in an agritourism conference once that I'm one of the best ones to follow if you want to know the story of the farm. And
mm,
I about lost it because, you don't, sometimes you don't consciously think about doing it. But hey, even
mm-hmm,
my stories today, I'm teaching people how to grow pumpkins, even though they may never ever try growing pumpkins in their life, but they have to see what that process is, and they're more inclined to come to our farm. They really are, because they feel invested into it, because they've watched those stories, and then they can appreciate the hard work that we put into it, that it just doesn't happen with like this. I just don't snap my fingers and it all comes together. They see how many hours that I put in, and it unfortunately, I'm getting to that age and a time in my life that I need to take a step back, because you can get burnout real quick. But um, so I'm trying to make those Sundays where I don't need to go to the farm, and that helps your mental side too, because you got to be able to take a step away from it. And but yeah, it's all about connecting the community. Hey, we had it before. We had a hard time finding employees to go seed our pumpkins into flats. I put it out there on social media, and the next day we had 25 people show up to our farm to help plant seeds in flats. Well, I
oh
just
wow.
gave them all a free. I gave them all a free admission to the farm, and they were happy as can be. But they felt like a sense of community, which is rare nowadays. I mean, hey, it's one of the things that we're going to keep pushing, is that sense of community. And hey, even date night was a phenomenal hit, because we put something together that was fun for couples to go to, and they didn't have to bring their kids, and they had a phenomenal time.
That's so cool. So you're doing like you did date nights. Isn't there a family barbecue coming up that you guys are doing?
Yeah, July 16. And
That's
I
awesome.
was like thinking, yeah. So we're hoping that we got plenty of time to get the word out. We kind of like to sell 400 tickets to something like that.
Hmm.
And it's for all those that want to come out to the farm, that it's not just pumpkin season. This is one of those opportunities. And hey, it's to me, it's a sense of community when you get to sit down with some of the most random of people, and hey, that's everything, because you can meet new people, and you can have a discussion. And because I kind of have a sense that we're all kind of just paranoid of talking. I mean, it was really bad coming out of COVID.
Hmm.
People just didn't want to communicate with other people, and I feel like we've done a great job of being able to bring people back. And I mean, hey, everybody's got a neighbor that they probably don't want to talk to that often, and that's totally fine. But if you can have that random conversation with another one, you don't know what people are going through. And again, these are all positive things, because I think in some ways we have people that are trying to break community apart. And I think don't get me wrong, I want people to follow me on social media, but I think people should be on social media less, and not follow the stuff that makes you angry. Like,
Oh yeah, no, 100%.
I never thought in a million years, because I'm kind of an Elon Musk fan, but the other night I just said, you know what? Screw this. I've deleted my Twitter because all it did was just make me angry, because people say incredibly crazy stuff there. And I'm like, why am I polluting my brain with this? So I'm like, bye. I don't need it anymore. I think that's why a lot of people have gravitated away from Facebook, because Facebook can be very political and ooh,
Hmm.
makes you nuts.
Yeah, you've got to be careful. I've gotten off of Twitter because I feel like Facebook, is like you can keep up with your friends and family. Instagram, you can share what you're eating or what you're doing. But Twitter, you're like kind of often sharing those intrusive thoughts, and you're engaged in debates with strangers that you'll never meet. And so that's why sometimes
Yeah.
it can really get the best of us, because like everybody's on there just spouting their. We're not going to Twitter to have debates. We're going to Twitter to defend our position, and that's it.
Yeah. And that's why I'm like, peace out. I mean, that's
Peace. See ya.
even though even though I do quite the nice Donald Trump impression, it's so powerful, it's so great. I do a wonderful impression, but a lot of times I let it go. So I used to do the Trump impression a lot. I actually have had this ability to do lots of different impressions. I mean, I remember being able to do Ronald Reagan back in the day, George
Oh,
Bush,
nice.
um, so many different impressions. Hank Hill is one of my favorite ones, boy. I tell you what,
I love Hank
I
Hill.
I could I I could probably sell propane and propane accessories. I tell you what. But again, the that's good stuff. And sometimes I'll still do the Trump impression, but I'll put my own spin on it. But man,
Hmm.
I've gotten dissertations from people on what a monster Trump is, and I'm like, I don't care. It's just an impression. It's just
Yeah, you're not
so
agreeing.
one
You're
of
not picking a stance. You're just making fun. It's an impression. That's it.
one of the things that I don't want to say that I've figured out on social media is, again, I think you have to be informative. Uh,
Hmm.
you have to kind of show what you're doing, but you have to be somewhat entertaining as well. And
Yeah, true.
when
Hmm.
one of the things that I get when I go into town, eat dinner with the wife, there are plenty of people that come up to us and go, "Oh my gosh, your husband's so funny," and my wife's like going, eh. She's
She's
just
like, I
like,
see it
"Oh,
twenty four
whatever."
seven.
Yeah, I see it 24/7, and he comes home like a real giant jerk. But the thing is, one of the things that people say is like, I love watching your videos because, again, there's entertainment there, and it doesn't cost them anything. Um, and if it costs them that one or two trips to the farm every year, hey, all great. So obviously for the farm, like I try to stay out of the political atmosphere, even though I'm pretty a staunch conservative, if you will, but I'm also very open minded to everyone that comes to the farm. I don't care what your background is. I don't care who you love. I don't care, I don't care. I just want you to have a good time at our farm.
I like it. Mic drop. Everybody's welcome at this farm. We're here for the farm, not to do anything else. I like that.
Right.
I feel like that's a very good perspective.
Yeah. Don't need to. Don't need to, you know, uh, that's And yeah, because all you do is end up upsetting somebody. And now sometimes I kind of push the line. Sometimes, I mean, hey, it wasn't more than a week ago that I posted an alpaca and a llama getting it on. So I mean, hey, I mean, they want to know how it goes. Like,
Hey, never a dull moment on the farm. You never know what you're gonna see.
no, I know, because you're just like, oh, so that's how it works. Okay.
So I think just like hearing your story and then following you on social media when it comes to agritourism, like a lot of people think that, your crop is the focus. But it seems like your crop and also the farm can be the backdrop for so much going on. Like in your case, I
Yeah.
mean, you've got zip lines, you've got date nights, you've got so much stuff. So it's not like when you want to go into agritourism, your pumpkins don't have to be 100% the focus. They can be a good backdrop, where the farm is really kind of acts as a place to bring everyone together.
We tried that for a number of years at the old farm. And when you see people walk out the door without paying for, they're not buying any pumpkins, and you see 10 people walk out the door and they didn't pay anything to get a ride. They didn't get to pay anything to go see a few animals. Now, we weren't what we are now. I mean, hey, and I'll never forget when we went to charging $3. People had threw fits. Oh, it used to be free. It used to be free. Yeah, well, gas used to be 24 cents a gallon too. I mean, what? eh, How do you expect me to make a living? And that's also one of the big reasons I show my story, and I show how much, because there is so much money that goes preloaded into the farm coming into October. That's the weird part, is like, hey, we start as early as April planting pumpkins,
Mm.
and we're not done. And then when we are done, we have to go to the field and remove all the drip tape and plastic and all that other stuff. So it's a I think some people just think it's really easy, and then when they see that, they go, "Oh gosh, now I know why pumpkins cost what they cost." Yeah, it's
Hmm.
because there's more to it than just putting seeds in the ground and they just grow. Well, it don't work like that.
It's extremely labor intensive from what I see.
Oh gosh, I mean, we should be done in less than 3 weeks, but yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to manage, and so many different varieties too, because we plant as many as 45 different varieties. So
Oh, wow.
everything has a different maturity date, and pumpkin seed was really tough to get this year too. So we may not reach that plateau this year, but we always have a really huge, wide variety of pumpkins, and we'll plant several different, like, larges. Um, like, for example, um, like, one variety is called Kratos, right? Has certain
Hmm.
characteristics. But we plant another one called Magic Wand, and there's others that we plant that are the same size, because if we have a failure in one, at least we have a backup variety. That Does that make any
Mm.
sense? Like, we always have
Yeah,
that
I gotcha.
backup
I gotcha.
variety, that we're not like going, oh crap, we don't have a crop this year. Last year was tough though. Man, it was so hot. It was not a good pumpkin growing this a year. But this year is looking amazing, because the weather has been super mild.
So the better the weather, the more varieties kind of prosper or kind of flourish whenever they're growing.
Yeah, I mean, because
Okay.
the plant isn't under stress, and you're
Mm.
like, we're going to have some hot weather coming up, and but they should survive just fine. As long as we don't get up in that 106 range, like, 103 kind of makes me go, I don't really like that. But um, 103 kind of makes me kind of go, yeah. But the mid to upper 90s is like perfect. And but we've had middle to upper 80s. Talk about those pumpkins look absolutely phenomenal.
Really, it's funny thinking about pumpkins growing in such a hot environment when we're used to them being very, fally and very cold weather crops that you think of. So that's very interesting that they kind of flourish in those hot
We're
temperatures.
we're in a very unique area where we have that delta breeze at night and it cools everything off. And so
Okay.
they have a they have a respite period from, let's just say, midnight to 10 in the morning, where they're like, oh, okay, we're good. And then they go into that stress mode for the day. And we're
Hmm.
always managing water, and drip irrigation is the only way to go. Drip irrigation is the only way to go, because you can feed directly to that plant very quickly.
Right. Yeah. Not a lot of runoff, not a lot of evaporation.
Correct. And it's the only way to go. We don't use a lot of water,
Hmm.
which is
Nice.
which is
So, I mean,
nice.
do pumpkins not use a lot of water, or is it that just you guys?
No, like, I mean, obviously the requirements become a little bit more as the fruit gets bigger, the plants get
Right.
bigger. Um, but like right now, especially like, for example, when we transplant a variety, so we seed them in flats, and then we grow them in a flat for about 2.5 weeks. And then we take that plant and then we put it into a transplanter, and it gets planted in the ground. We water them for a half a day, and oftentimes they don't see any more water for at least another week.
Okay.
And we, yeah, just because of the plastic, we put plastic mulch on the top as well, but the drip line is underneath that. And so we're very efficient as far as the amount of water that's. You would be amazed how much one garden hose could like water in a day. It's really remarkable. So imagine putting 10 water hoses together, and you can, like, for example, you can easily water 7 acres. No, I don't want to say seven. You can easily water 5 acres on just a regular domestic well. You
Oh,
don't
wow.
need
Okay.
any you don't need any huge. I mean, so many people hear the boogeyman, and people are like, oh, these farmers, they put all these gigantic wells in the ground. And yeah, it's amazing what little water you can use, and the requirements, especially when it's cool like this. It's not a lot.
That's interesting. Okay, yeah, I thought that pumpkins, obviously because they get huge, would be extremely water intensive, but that's very interesting to learn. All right, fun fact of the day.
No, it is common for us to irrigate every other day, but it's a very short period of time. Does that make any
Right.
sense? We want that water level to come up and then go back down, bring
Hmm.
it back up and bring it back down. So, uh, and a lot of it is in the stage of the plant, but um, yeah, it's really amazing that we do just more often, and it
Hmm.
just keeps the plant happy.
Happier and healthier. Well, I mean, it seems like obviously what you guys are doing is working because you have so many fans of the farm, of the pumpkin. So clearly you guys are doing something that's working. So that's always good to know.
Facebook is nuts, and I pretty much gave up on Facebook years ago. And then I looked and I go, holy crap. Like right now, we're over 43,000 followers on Facebook. And I'm like, what the heck is that? Like, where did these people come from? But again, and that's why my wife and I basically can't go anywhere in town without someone. Hi, Farmer John. I'm like, Hi, remember, kids, don't do drugs.
The local celebrities. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard that many times, and I always just go, "Oh, stop it,"
Yeah, I
because
guess it's one of
you
those
know.
things where you think it's cool, but then you're actually famous and you're like, I want to go back to being normal.
Well, yeah, and that's why when you're in, Mexico on holiday and nobody recognizes you, you're kind of like, "Oh, this is kind of nice." It's like,
Might just move
um,
here.
yeah. Well, no, I'm not ready for that, but and that's the joy of Instagram in particular is I've made friends with a lot of large farm accounts that don't do what I do. They're like either corn and
Hmm.
soybeans. Like for example, like you want the millennial farmers telephone number? Here you go. I millennial farmer reached 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and that's
He did.
that's wild. That's wild. And yet, what's neat is I'm actually able to just shoot him a text whenever I feel like, and it's just because I don't know when some of these big farm accounts find out that you're just kind of a normal guy, they bring you in because there's a lot of weird people out there. There's, I mean, it's not without its headaches from time to time. There's people that will message you on every single story, and you're like, it's like it's great. I'm glad you're a fan, but like I'm the one seeing all the messages on Instagram. That's how I got to you. Because if I didn't, if I'm like the millennial farmer, he probably would have never seen your message. So I mean, it is kind of what it is.
Yeah, Zach has got. I had him on maybe 2 years ago, and yeah, he has boomed on YouTube on all the social medias. He's so popular. But yeah, I can't imagine how people like him that have countless followers, how they manage all the interactions and everything. I mean,
Well,
I'm sure
well,
he's got to
and
hire an
you could
assistant at
just
some point.
you could tell like when I first met him, he was like kind of like, okay, is this guy going to be weird or what? And after hanging out for a couple hours, you could tell like, okay, that guard comes down because
Yeah.
hey, we were in Minnesota before. I was in Minnesota for a friend's funeral, and Zach was there with the Larson family, and sure enough, there was a guy that he just showed up. He's like a guy that has like 1,000 followers, and he just shows up. And I mean, this guy is just weird with a capital W. And it was an awkward moment because I'm like, seriously, is this what happens to you? He's like, oh, like it's
Poor guy.
crazy. Yeah, it was because Zach pulls out his phone. He's like, look how many messages or tags that he's put me in, and he's just like doing that for like 2 minutes, and I'm like, wow, that's crazy. But and
That's
then he
wild.
shows up. Then he shows up at like this private event, and you're like, that's weird, man. I can't imagine. Uh, yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure for those big creators to have. I mean, when they're like almost stalked in public because they have such a huge reach, people want to, I don't know, mooch off of them. They're like, hey, if I hang out with this person, they'll tag me, and then I can get so many more followers. So I feel like they're very selfish about it. So I mean, if you're trying to build those relationships, I get it, but you've got to be very, very careful about it and about how you go about
Yeah, hey, I will admit, like back in the day, I was trying like really, really hard to like kind of climb off their backs, if you will, and
it.
then you finally kind of figure it out, and you kind of go, I don't need these guys. Yeah, they're great, don't, and they're good friends, but like I don't need them to have a large following. And
Yeah.
my demographic is not that uh, 18 to 35-year-old man in the Midwest. It's women between the ages of 18 and 45 with 2.5 children here locally. And so that's what I hone in on. And that's why, again, I wish I was younger and better looking, but I'm not.
Hey, you got to focus on your customers. You got to focus on those demographics. I mean, that's smart. Those are business metrics. I mean, that's a reason why Instagram and all the social medias help you track that, so you can gain, better insights into who's watching your content and how you can tailor it.
Of like the 43,000 on Facebook, it's like 82% that are women. So you're like, oh, I guess I figured it out. So.
That's awesome. Well, John, this has been so cool chatting with you, learning about Dutch Hollow Farms. I'm here in Florida, but if I'm ever over in California, I'm going to have to visit you guys. But obviously, if people want to visit, where can they go, and what social media channels can they go to kind of follow you and what all's going on at the farm?
Obviously, Dutch Hollow Farms on Instagram and Facebook, and that's really the only two platforms that we kind of concentrate on. Yes, I'm on TikTok, but haven't really focused too much on TikTok. I don't know if that's, really the route that I want to go on. You find a point where there's only so much you can do. And if you need to know a little bit more about the history of the farm, blah, 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 you can always go to DutchHollowFarms.com. It's all pretty simple, but yeah, if you message me on Instagram, you're going to get me. And that's unique and different too, because a lot of people, if you're going to message Taco Bell, you're not going to get the Taco Bell owner, right? I mean, so it's kind of neat. It's a lot of work, and I'll be looking forward to December, January, when I can kind of step back from some of my stories and just kind of like, just chill out a little bit.
Just enjoy the off season. Yeah, we'll be watching your page and everything, and it'll be cool to follow and see how it goes in October, November when you guys are really booming. But yeah, can't wait to see how the season goes for you. And thanks so much for being on.
And just a word of advice: if you ever decide to go to an agritourism farm, if you have a small child with you and he decides to, or she decides to poop their diaper, please put that diaper into a garbage can and not into somebody's parking lot.
Oh my gosh.
There's actually a tally. There's actually a tally I start on diapers the mask thing is kind of over, but diapers, I remember picking up over 30 diapers in my parking lot in a season. And I'm like,
what, 30?
Yes. And
Good
so
night.
You know what? What's funny though is because I've kind of made fun of it, it's usually less than 10 now. Plus we have a lot more garbage cans out in the parking lot. But I mean, come on, you're just too lazy to go put your kid's diaper. Hey, my wife and I always had a bag that we could put a diaper in if there wasn't a garbage can nearby.
Yeah.
Just be considerate.
Probably a smart idea. I'm glad you made fun of them and put garbage cans out there so that number has dramatically decreased. Hopefully it's five or under this coming fall.
In fact, I do have a reel on Instagram that was dubbed with some The Price is Right music about me finding a diaper in the parking lot. Like, bam, just like that. Yeah.
That's perfect. I'll have to go look for that one. That's fun. That's a good idea for a reel.
I'll send it to you.
That's perfect. Well, John, thanks so much for being on, man. We appreciate it. Thanks again for watching, and thanks to John for coming on the show. Learned a ton from him. If I'm ever in the Central Valley, I'm going to go check it out. You go check it out if you're over there. And of course, go check out all the links below in the description of this video. You can check out John. You can check out Dutch Hollow Farms. as well as more Farm Traveler content. We have episodes every week. We've got a cool little Farm Finder Facebook page you can join, our newsletter. Again, all of that will be in the link below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.